Last night, a Manchester United squad decimated by injury and fatigue went away to Nottingham Forest and got a crucial 1-0 win to progress through to the next round of the FA Cup. Now, this was by no means perfect. Individually, tactically, there were a lot of negatives from the game. However, I also felt that there were some positives. So today we're going to go through the game. What was good in the first half, what was bad in the first half in a tactical sense, and what was the key change which Ten Hag made at half-time, which completely changed the flow of this football match and allowed United to get the 1-0 win. Let's take a look. Now, the main focus for this video is going to be Manchester United in possession, because that is what we saw for most of the game. So what were the differences in the first half to the second half? In the first half, United looked to play out from the back, and Nottingham Forest were very, very passive. Something we predicted in the stream before the game. Forest didn't show much interest in pressing super high up the pitch. They weren't squeezing particularly high, and as a result, the likes of Varane, Lindelof could quite comfortably walk the ball out from the back. Like in a situation like this, we can see Forest have got players reasonably high up the pitch, but they're not really showing any intensity. We can see all of these players are moving in the same direction, back towards their own goal. And that made life a little bit easier for United. The fact that we didn't face a high press and were given a bit of time on the ball. From here, the important thing was the shape and how you look to break down Nottingham Forest, because they were quite a deep side at times in this game. And the approach which United took was a 3-2 shape in possession, but a very rotational one. So it would work something like this. Raphael Varane was very often the left-sided centre-back. Lindelof was nearly always the central centre-back, which is an interesting dynamic with those two. And Dalot played a slightly deeper role than what he has done in recent weeks. Of course, he was given the licence to get forward still, but often he was tucking into a back three. From here, Casemiro was regularly, nearly always in the double pivot, but the player alongside him often changed. So sometimes we would see McTominay push high, and we would see Sofian Amrabat and Casemiro alongside each other in midfield. On another occasion, Amrabat would be out wide and Bruno Fernandes would be deeper, like this. And then on another occasion, we would actually see Scott McTominay dropping into the double pivot as well. So, is this a good thing? Well, to be fair, it's not a bad thing. Because what we can see is that United create this 3-2 shape, and we have more players than Forest in these areas, which is going to make ball progression a little bit easier. When you can outnumber the opposition in these areas, that is very, very useful. In that first clip, we saw Scott McTominay in a double pivot. In this clip here, we've now got Bruno Fernandes playing in the double pivot alongside Casemiro. And of course, the result of this is that you can overload Forest in this first phase. We can see that we've got 4 Forest players to the 5 United players, and United can move the ball forward. What we also saw in this game was a slightly more patient approach in possession. We weren't quite as direct. We didn't play the ball forward quite as quickly, allowing us to slowly move the ball forward through the thirds. So again, that's a pretty good thing. And as a result, United were able to get in some good areas and on occasion operate and create that front 5 which was spoken about in recent weeks. The ability to get this front 5 up against the Forest back 4. And again, this was something which we predicted before the game. United were never going to be perfect in this match, but due to the tactical setup of both sides, we always felt that United would have spells where they could get on the ball, they could progress it and then overload the last line. And we saw that in the first half with chances created for Scott McTominay. Creating these runs, we can see here 3 players in the box. There's also one on the far side of the box as Dalot looks to put the ball from the right-hand side. So that's 5 players on the last line for United. And another situation here, once again, the cross for Scott McTominay. We can see United pushing all of these players forward, and when you overload the last line, you get players into key channels of space. So we can see Scott McTominay here in a key channel of space, and also Marcus Rashford here in another channel between defenders. And this allowed United to be pretty threatening in the first half of the match. So, those are positives. If there are those positives, why do I still say it was a little bit of a poor half at times? Well, it's because whilst the shape was good, this 3-2-4-1 approach or the 3-2-5, it's a good shape. The problem was it was a little bit too rotational. And with the personnel available, that put the wrong players and the wrong profiles in the wrong position. So what do I actually mean when I'm talking about this? Well, for example, if we saw a rotation where, let's say, Scott McTominay has dropped deeper. We saw this quite a lot in the first half. But also, Garnacho has moved into the half space, Fernandes is in here, and Amrabat is on the left-hand side. If we now look at the profiles in each position, we've got a double pivot which doesn't really excel in terms of technical ability to dictate a game, control the tempo of a match with their passing. It's just not their strength. But we've also got someone like Garnacho operating in half spaces, which he can do, but I don't think it's his best position. I think he's better out wide. And then also Sofian Amrabat, who is not a fullback, who is now overlapping down the left-hand side onto his weaker foot. So when he gets into the final third, he's not got too much to offer. And this was the problem for United in the first half, in my opinion. And again, we've got the example of this here. Amrabat is in a really good position here. Can you imagine if this was Luke Shaw, for example, playing left back, and we had someone like Rasmus Højlund in the middle? But because of the lack of players available for United, and too many rotations in the structure, we saw the wrong players in the wrong positions. So Amrabat is now our wide threat, which just doesn't make sense. It doesn't suit his skill set. Garnacho and Bruno Fernandes have got a little bit confused and kind of made the same run. And Marcus Rashford, our striker, just isn't really up front because it's not where he wants to play. So the rotations, we saw too many of them. We saw too many rotations. And this led to a first half which had mistakes in it. When you put players in positions where they're not particularly comfortable, they're going to lose the ball. Someone like Amrabat is a central midfielder. So when he is forced at times to play it out wide, it completely changes his passing angles. And as a result, we saw mistakes in the first half. We saw situations where United would try and move the ball forward, but someone like Scott McTominay, for example, had a poor first half with his passing, gave the ball away quite a lot. We saw a couple of really sloppy Sophie and Amrabat passes. And of course, when you do this against a side like Forest, who look to be nice and direct on the counter-attack, they're going to get chances. So this was the problem with the first half. The United shape was okay, but it was too rotational. And these rotations also caused a little bit of confusion at times as well. Because when you're rotating player in this position a lot, it's quite easy to get it wrong. So there were situations where Casemiro would get himself isolated because Amrabat hasn't rotated in because he's assuming McTominay is going to do it, or he's assuming Fernandes is going to do it. But then if they all assume each other are going to do it, no one does it. And it left Casemiro a little bit isolated in possession. This was something else which led to turnovers in the game. And as a result, Forest were able to get the ball, quickly counter-attack and hit United. And we saw it in the first half. A lot of shots from Forest, 12 shots in the first half, with 11 of them being from inside the Manchester United penalty area. So realistically, in that first half, because there were too many rotations and then United were very passive from a defensive point of view, Forest could have had goals. They could have had goals in that first half. I think Onana done well. I think the centre-backs done well of kind of stopping these last-ditch chances. I think their box in the defence was pretty good. But in general, the foundation was there in the first half, but it wasn't a great performance.
So before we continue into the video, a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, JerseyFifa.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that be the new latest releases or the old classic ones like this, Jersey FIFA has something for everyone, and now you can check it out yourself using the link in the description down below. And also make sure to use code JerseyFifa for 10% off when you order.
Erik Ten Hag then makes a key change, and he stops and he reduces the rotations in the midfield. He reduces the rotations and he almost simplifies it a little bit. And this was something which he spoke about actually in his interview after the game. He said what he now done was always had 2 6s. So previously what we saw was Casemiro at times being isolated because the player rotating next to him changed. In the second half, he changed to 2 6s around the 50th minute, and he said it after the game.
But once we have that control in the game, and when we make that double 6s, and we are keeping the ball and passing the ball from one side to the other side, then we took the control.
Now the player which he is talking about now being that 6 alongside Casemiro was of course Sofian Amrabat. Reflected in his heat map, we can see that in the second half he was very, very central with the way that he played, and it's also reflected in the average positions of the side. We can now see quite a clear back 3, but then Sofian Amrabat from left back regularly inverting next to Casemiro. This now creates the 3-2 shape on a regular basis. So now Sofian Amrabat, rather than receiving the ball on the touchline, where he doesn't want to be, he's now receiving the ball in the centre of the pitch. Garnacho's on the left-hand side, McTominay is higher up the pitch, which is where I think he belongs, and the same for the case of Bruno Fernandes as well. Suddenly, with a small change, with less positional rotations, we've got ourselves 2 6s, and players starting to look like they are in more natural positions. Garnacho is out wide where he can take players on, and he also had good rotations with Rashford as well in the second half. So again, rather than Amrabat overlapping down the left-hand side of the pitch, Marcus Rashford would do it, and Garnacho would come into these positions. For me, this was the big change. This was the big change which really helped United. Sofian Amrabat in here. This is a midfielder. This is a retention-based midfielder. It's something which I told you a lot in the summer. He is very, very good at keeping the ball. Very good. Very good at keeping the ball for his side, and his ability to kind of play these medium sort of range passes, but also the long passes as well, was really useful for United in this half. Because what it allowed us to do, as Ten Hag said, was to move the ball from side to side, and Amrabat was a key part of that. A key part. We see it in his stats. He played very, very well in the second half. And what this done was it just massively improved United, because United could keep the ball a little bit better. And because they could keep the ball better, that transitional threat of Forest was massively reduced. In the second half, Forest had far less attacks, far less threatening in the second half, only 4 shots. And that was because United was so much better in possession, but also the rest defence structure was now better, because we always had 2 players in here ready to go towards the ball, and the defensive line wasn't as deep as what we have seen in recent weeks. And I truly believe this was the big change which changed the game. It allowed United to get the right players in the right areas. So like I said, the structure and the idea was there in the first half. The actual shape was not bad in the first half at all, but the key was having the right players in the right positions. It's something which we struggled with at the weekend, and we struggled with it in the first half of this game. In the second half, Ten Hag makes a key change, and it allows United to take control of the game. And then, when United lost the ball, I thought we looked better than what we have done recently in the second half. Casemiro won more of his duels. Still not perfect, he's still a little bit slow and dives in a bit too much, but he did do a better job. And Amrabat in this position now knew where he needed to be. He knew his role in the second half. In the first half, it was a little bit confused. Like I said, players kind of pointing at each other a little bit, unsure who is meant to be in what positions. In the second half, it was much more straightforward, and it massively helped United. Now, of course, actually the final win in the end is a close one. It comes from a set piece, but I think United deserve to win the game, and the expected goals kind of points to that as well. So I think United were the better team. I don't think it was perfect, but on a night where we had a squad which we were really worried about. We weren't sure if Varane would play, we weren't sure if Fernandes would play, and he was quite clearly injured, so a massive bit of credit goes to him for fighting on in this game, and of course getting the assist at the end there, and getting strangled as well, a little bit odd. But I think United deserve credit. I've been very critical recently, but this could have been one of those nights where it just goes horribly, horribly wrong. But with an injury-hit squad, with a clearly fatigued squad, and even a slightly rotated squad, United got the win. They got the goal that they needed, and we're through to the next round of the FA Cup. And in the Cup, that is the most important thing. It isn't all about results. It isn't all about performances. It's purely about results, and we're in the next round. We've got Liverpool next. Can we beat them? We'll have to wait and see. Of course, we've got league games before that. But in general, I think Ten Hag deserves credit for at half-time recognising a tactical mistake he had made. That takes a lot to do that. Recognise that you got it wrong in the first half, admitting you got it wrong, but then putting the changes in place to fix it, that is good management. So Ten Hag deserves a lot of credit for his second half, as do the players in my opinion. I think they've done well in a tricky circumstance. So those are my thoughts on this match. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Who was the best player on the pitch? I think Diogo Dalot is right up there. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. But Sofiane Amrabat in the second half as well. Quality. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Apart from that, we are finished though for today. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.